and welcome back to Sustaining Practices for Perilous Times. I'm Rabbi Jen Queen. I am the Director of Engagement and Reform Rabbi at Harvard Hillel and one of the University Chaplains. And I am super thrilled to be here once again for our Sustaining Practices program. So just in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get started. So for those of y'all who are joining us again, welcome back. And those of you for whom this is your first time, welcome, welcome. So the Sustaining Practices for Perilous Times series features Harvard chaplains, faculty, administrators, and others from the wider Harvard community, offering insight into their personal spiritual practices. So this program defines spiritual practice broadly and seeks to showcase a diverse array of multimodal practices, from prayer to poetry, movement to mindfulness, cooking, and other creative outlets that inspire, cultivate meaning, provide emotional and spiritual sustenance, hope, energy, and courage to press forward in these fractured and difficult days. So we are here every Thursday, 5 to 5:30 through the end of April. And to learn together and practice together from some of our esteemed community members. So at this point, I will kick it over to Rachel.
Hi all, thanks Rabbi Jen. I'm Rachel Leiken. I work as the Multi-Faith Engagement Fellow at Harvard based in the Memorial Church. So excited to be with you all. I'm so pumped about our two wonderful presenters for this session. We're so excited to have Dean Alta Mauro, who's the Associate Dean for Inclusion and Belonging, and Micahela Mobley, who's the Assistant Director at the Harvard College Women's Center, joining us to talk about their practices of connection. Thank you both so much. I'm so excited to hear what you're going to share. And so without further ado, I want to kick it over to Dean Mauro.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I am really grateful to be here. I'm glad to be presenting alongside Micahela, who we work on the same team. And I didn't know that we would be presenting together until I sort of got the confirmation. So first, I want to make a lot of disclaimers, which, if you ever hear me speak or present anywhere, we start off with a, hey, how y'all doing? And some disclaimers about let's expect this and not that. And so when I listened to Rabbi Queen describe how she's framing spirituality, I was like, ooh, I had the same feeling as when I was first asked to participate in this way, when I had to say no. When I thought, I don't know that I have any spiritual practices that are sustaining me well, or anything that I would describe as a spiritual practice. I tend to be an oversharer. So in the spirit of oversharing, I've been doing some spiritual wandering of my own in the last few years. And I was raised Christian. I love Jesus and all the other things. But I also have had really good friends in my life who have exposed me to new and different things. And my own sort of spiritual needs have been met, and I've been fed by other traditions and little nuggets from other traditions. And so there's a part of me that feels great about that wandering. I feel expanded by that wandering. And there's a part of me that remembers what my pastor told all of us during graduation ceremony, right? When all the high school students were graduating and were acknowledged at church before going off to university is, don't go off to college and rub your head against the wall and come back and be a Buddhist or come back and be a something else, right? And this was an encouragement to stay true to what you knew. And as I get older and travel and have different people and their values and their ways of centering themselves come in and out of my life and impact me, I think I'm a person of the book, and I am figuring out exactly what that means. And so I was shy, of course, I'm never shy, but I was slow to suggest that anything that I had been doing, particularly in these times where I don't know that I'm all that impressed with myself, should be put forth as a practice that anyone else would, that had enough sort of tenets to it that it would be considered a practice, or that it could be instructive for anyone else, or that it would be, that anyone would hold it up as a model. Made me feel, I was really reticent about that. And so those are my disclaimers. And I prepared a really kind of wonky slides to walk us through that a little bit. And I have, just a little bit of a story to go with it. So I will share my screen now. So I put together what I've called sustaining practices, like better late than never, I guess, right? As I guess is like the phrase of the times right now. And it's, I guess, feels very familiar to me. I think, I'll come around to this at the end, I hope, but for the most part, I'm coming back to some things that feel really familiar, and that I've learned that there is a theme to what I have done that has sustained me, and it's been coming back to things that are familiar. And many of us are sort of longing for. People say things like last year, not realizing that 2020 was last year, not 2019, right? So we're making these cognitive quantum leaps, and we're longing for past times, and I'm sort of doing the same. So these are some practices. No need to read the language on the left. I just copied this from Canva. So this is what I did during quarantine. Like everybody else, I started cooking. And like I skipped the whole banana bread phase because I had been making banana bread for years. Like everybody and their mom was making banana bread. But I did. Like first it was like, okay, this will be a great time. Like I could be at home and I could cook whatever I want, spend lots of time in the kitchen. All right, so I did that. And then I started learning Turkish. Like, don't even get me started, right? Like, erkek arkadaş, like an old boyfriend. I was like, I should pick this back up again. So I started learning Turkish, and this didn't feel like home or familiar, but I'm very stubborn. And once I start something, I don't stop. So not with said boyfriend anymore, but I was like, I'm going to continue doing this. So now I'm learning Turkish. And that felt like something to do. That gave me a cognitive focus. Like if you don't log on to the app every day, you lose your spot and you're competing with all these other people whose faces you can see. So a sense of competition, something I could win. And winning felt very familiar. So, in hindsight, I went back to something I could win at. Then I started walking and jogging. This is not me, of course, but I started walking and jogging, and I was living in the Middle East. I was living in Abu Dhabi when we went to quarantine. And this time in Abu Dhabi, it was 105 degrees outside, the humidity starting to head back up. So I started like, you're out like walking and jogging for 45 minutes, like along the beach or something, and your body changes very quickly. And I liked it. So it felt like, I might get back to my pre-baby body. So again, getting back to something that felt familiar and felt good. And so I kept at it. Then as you're running or walking, you need to listen to something. And I kind of got tired of my same playlist. So I started listening to these audiobooks. And I used to be a very avid reader. So getting back to reading, I sort of dumped myself into these really sad, beautiful novels. So now I'm empathy for someone else as opposed to feeling sorry for myself. It gave me like a new locus of sadness. And maybe that was Freudian and I didn't intend it that way. Someone just recommended this beautiful, sad book that was very long. So it took me days, hours of listening to this book. I think it's like 26 hours long. But I was externalizing bad feelings to free myself up for some good feelings. But I was also carrying this sort of water with these other characters who were completely fictional. And so the practice of empathy, like I started to, have some grace with myself. I'm realizing much later. Then I bought a cello. Sure did, had it shipped to me and put the bridge together by myself, strung this cello in my living room one weekend while my kids were with their dad. But I used to play cello. I started playing cello in elementary school. I played through middle school and part of high school. And it was quite good, but then I wanted to be a different kind of cool kid. So I started to be a cheerleader and left cello. In one of these days where the sad audiobook came to be too heavy, I switched to classical music. I'd heard like floating out of someone else's house on my walk and just remembered it. So I had this cello sent to me and I sat down to play, and it was mortified at how I sounded, but spent a couple good weeks at that. And then once I got good enough for a person who hadn't touched a cello in 25 years, I was like, okay, done that. And it was time to move, sold the cello to an old student and moved on. But being able to sort of revisit something and work at it on my own and sort of conquer it also felt good. Now I have a house full of plants that are dying. Imagine this is me whispering to the plant, please stay, is essentially what's happening. But so I sort of say this to say, I've done all the things that everyone else has done, right? Like I've done all the things and more. I think I put a quote on the bottom of this that says, I used to be so good at this. I used to have a house full of plants. But what's important to realize is I had a house full of plants when I had the right windows. And so much of what I'm doing now, it really was the plants that got me to realize I'm reaching for things that don't exist anymore. I'm reaching to cultivate a greenhouse and a house that doesn't have the same windows, the same sun access. This is just a different time. And all these things that I've been doing were also from a different time. And what I really need to do is just sort of start over. So I've started lots of things over, just start over, start over, start over. But I started all these things that used to bring me joy, and I need to start over the things that are very present in my life right now. And it really was a friend who said to me, you know, if you showed as much grace to yourself as you extend to other people, you would feel differently. You would hold yourself differently. I can be a pretty self-critical person, and I think I was really judging myself for how I was not using the time, right? I was not developing these beautiful memories with my children. We were not starting new family traditions. I was not. And so instead of resetting in those ways, I was revisiting lots of other things that I thought I could conquer. And that set me down a bit. And so as we are wont to do, like quoting and misquoting Rumi, I thought, you know, what better time to quote and or misquote Rumi, but this idea of sort of finding new meaning in joy and sorrow, and really sitting with how sad I was, and then starting over. I was trying to restart things without first like going through. And you know, many of us might remember the sort of little kid song, you know, you can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it, right? This is how we all learn the prepositions. Like you have to go through things. And so where I am now, there is a good bit of starting over, but I'm trying to start every day with just grace for myself and forgiveness for myself. Like I shout at my kids and I'm not happy with that. I go and I apologize and I explain myself and I encourage my kids to hold me accountable, and then I start over. And that doesn't seem like a practice, but it does seem like the kind of grace that you might have. What kind of practice will we have at a time like this? It's sort of unreasonable, you know, to think that there would be something that we already know how to do, and that, you know, that we're at fault for not doing it well. So I share that sort of haphazard, that felt very meandering, but it felt also just like where I've been and what I've done and how I've gotten here. And I do feel, I don't know that I feel happy necessarily with myself, like happiness is sort of fleeting, but I do feel proud of myself. And I feel comfortable with myself in just being honest about what this has felt like, and starting some things fresh with grace.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful and honestly so relatable. Like really just wonderful to hear someone voice out loud those things. I want to pass it over now to Nikki.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Rabbi Jen and Rachel, for inviting me into this space. I truly, truly appreciate being able to share a practice that has really been getting me through not only the compounding trauma or hard times of being in this pandemic, being away from my family. As I recently arrived to Harvard only a few months before the pandemic had started, and being away from my family and such. And so I truly appreciate being able to share a little bit of what has gotten me through this time with you all. And so, Rachel, whenever you're able to share your screen for my presentation, thank you. So I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about how I've been able to sustain myself by connecting to my ancestors. And so we're going to talk today a little about what ancestor veneration is, how this is part of my practice as a practitioner of a African diasporic religion, and basically show you a little bit about what does that even mean. So next slide, Rachel. So just a little bit of an introduction. Hello, my name is Micahela. Feel free to call me Nikki. And I am the assistant director for the Harvard College Women's Center. Like I said, I recently started working there September of 2019. And my pronouns are she, they. So next slide, please. So I wanted to start, as I start off, I want to start off most of my presentations or just in community with folks is to come into some grounding. So I invite you to lower your gaze, or perhaps close your eyes if it feels comfortable to you. Feel free to definitely turn off your screens in this moment. And I invite you to focus on where you are at in your breath right now. And so I'm not asking you to change the speed of your breath or to deepen or to, however, I ask you to notice where you are sitting at in your body. And so I invite you now to think about how we sometimes show up very shallow in our breath due to stress. And I don't know about you all, but Thursday is one of my most stressful days. And so I invite you to, on your next inhale for a count of 4. And we can do that together. So inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. And just hold for a second here for 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale fully for 4, 3, 2, 1. And you can take a few of these breaths in and out just for yourself. Knowing that sometimes we are not stopping throughout our days, even to just connect with ourselves. And so now I invite you to come back into our little Zoom community space. And I thank you for taking that moment just to be with us and with yourself in this moment. And so if we can go to the next slide, Rachel. So let's talk about what ancestor veneration is. So this is a practice that is very much seen in African traditional religions, ATRs, or African diasporic religions. And so what does it mean to venerate your ancestors? It simply means that you are, I'm sorry, my speaker's Zoom is doing something wild right now. To venerate your ancestors simply means to uplift them, to honor them. And so in African traditional religions and some in African diasporic religions, such as Ifa or Santeria, such as Voodoo, Hoodoo, Obia, these are religions that were started on the continent of Africa. And because of the transatlantic slave trade has spread across the diaspora. And so in different parts of where you find Black people, our religion may show up in different ways, but it's something that will always connect us is the fact that we still honor and venerate our ancestors. And so what that means is, typically you will come into a home and you will see pictures, maybe a table set up for family members who have passed on that we still hold very dear in our hearts. And for some people, it looks different in different ways. So I wanted to share, how do I venerate my ancestors? And I'll share a little bit with you about my ancestor altar. But how this practice has specifically sustained me is that in a time where I'm very much disconnected from my family who is still living in this physical plane, it has offered me opportunities to learn to connect with both my family now and my family who has passed on by having those conversations. So I've spent many an hours just talking to my parents about, their parents who have both passed on, and talking or remembering family members who I've recently lost during this pandemic or within the last few years. And having a place where I can talk to them, talk about them, has been a saving grace. I cannot even stress that it has made me feel like I'm not alone, and that my family
even though that they may not be here in this physical plane with me, we know that they never leave because they are always with us. They are guiding us. They are loving on us. They are opening us up for blessings. And so I would love to share with you, what does that actually look like? So if we can go to the next slide. So as a practitioner of an African diasporic religion, I connect to my ancestors by creating a dedicated space in my home for my ancestor altar. So I will not be showing you my altar today, but this is a very close, this picture here is very close to what it looks like in my home. And so for an ancestor altar, the items are usually, we will showcase the 4 elements and some other optional items. So on my ancestor altar are 2 cups of water, representing both my maternal and my paternal lineages. And water serves as a connection between the living and those who have passed. So think of it as like a telephone line. So it is very important that I have to refill my water with fresh and clear water, because we are strengthening that connection to receive clear communication from our elevated ancestors. So additionally, fire. So I keep a white candle on my altar and I keep it lit consistently. And we think of fire as the heart of the altar. Fire has no solid body, but it is still alive. And I like to think of the candle as a signal to my ancestors that they are always welcomed in my home. And I feel their presence with me when my candle is lit. The next is air. So air is represented through incense smoke. Incense is something that you'll always smell burning in my house. And air, just like spirit, is formless. And earth. On my altar, earth is represented by seashells. So I have a deep connection to the ocean and sand, being that my maternal family is from the Caribbean and I grew up near the water here living in the States. So when I feel off center, I have to go near some water. Connecting to water and sand, that is what grounds me. There was a 2-year period. So before living in Massachusetts, I was actually living in Vegas. I lived there for 2 years. And let me tell you, living in a landlocked state, it was so incredibly hard to try to get to some water. And what we have to remember is that we are born into the earth. And in death, we are also connected back to the earth. So it is a cycle of life. And these are the items that you will find on most folks who practice an African traditional or a diasporic religion, and they have an ancestor altar. Those are for the representations of the elements is something you will always find on their altar. And then we have some like, oh nope, just one more, we can go back. So there are also some optional items that can be found on the altar, such as food and drinks. So when I have a taste or a craving for something, I take that as a message that my ancestors would like that to be laid as an offering on the altar. So my maternal grandfather loved pineapple ginger juice and peanut punch. And there was a time for it was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks that I was like, I really want some pineapple ginger juice. I want some peanut punch. And I haven't had this since my grandfather passed away when I was in elementary school. So this has been over 2 decades. And but I knew that I for some reason I had to just have it. So I knew that was my grandfather speaking to me and telling me, like, you know, he always used to call me daughter, and he said, daughter, you better put that on I need that on the altar. I need that. And so I made some for both of us. I made a glass for me, a glass for him, and I laid it on the altar for him. Some other options are pictures of your past loved ones and items that meant something to them. My family, both on my mother's side was raised Catholic in the islands, and my father, on my father's side, they were raised Christian. So because of that, I keep a Bible on my altar. Sometimes people think that you can't practice an ATR or an ADR and also be Christian, but I found that my practice has allowed for me to both be in my feel more well supported, being that I'm both Christian and a practitioner of an ADR. And so now we can go to the next slide. So what do I do at my altar? So each morning I come to my altar after I've cleansed myself. And that means for me taking a shower, washing my face, brushing my teeth. As my grandfather, my mother's side is wont to say, you have to scrub your mouth for the day. And I will also take Florida water, which is it is a spiritual cologne that practitioners of African traditional and diasporic religions will utilize in their practice. And I put them on my pressure points and upon my head to make sure that I've also cleansed my crown. And then I will light my candle and sit in front of my altar and just focus my gaze on the candle. And once I feel centered outwardly, I then close my eyes and meditate to center myself inwardly. And then I will pray to my benevolent or elevated ancestors. And I make that distinction clear is because I know that in some families there have been trauma, and not every person is has done well to you in life, or and so if there's a family member who was not kind to you or has wronged you in life, you do not have to elevate them in the afterlife. That is okay until they are ready to make those amends in some way. And so I pray to my benevolent ancestors, and I thank them for the protection and blessings they have already given to me. I ask for protection and guidance as I journey throughout my day. And I ask for them to help me to remain open to blessings that they have set forth for me as I journey through this life. And then I simply just close in meditation. And this is something that has really helped me to feel that I can journey on through my day. That anytime that I start to feel off center, I immediately will just ask my ancestors to guide me and to protect me. And it has made me feel that I can be, that I can be and I can do my absolute best. And so we can go to our next slide. And so I thank you all for allowing me to share that practice with you. I hope that ancestor veneration is something that is very much situated in the African traditional and diasporic religion. And even if you are not someone of those cultural backgrounds, I think that we can all talk about how we can honor our people on this plane, and make amends or to uplift people or to heal our lineages. Because when you heal ourselves, we heal our lineages 7 generations back and 7 generations in the future. So there's my contact information. If you ever want to chat more about this, I am definitely here. I love all things ATR and ADR as tools for liberation for both the self and the collective. So thank you so much, Rachel and Rabbi Jen, for allowing me to share this with you all.
Thank you so much, Mickey and Alta. Oh, Alta had to head out to another meeting, but I am so grateful to both of y'all for being here and sharing so deeply. In the interest of time, it looks like we only have maybe a minute. So I know Mickey was gracious enough to leave their contact information. And if folks who are in attendance have questions, I'm sure both Mickey and Alta would be happy to hear from you. I'll just say that I'm super grateful to both of y'all for your demonstrations of real deep connection in such beautifully different ways. Whether it's the personal practice of hitting the reset button as we're able throughout our day-to-day, or really reaching back, right, this act of reaching back to our ancestors in order to reach forward and strive forward, are just so beautifully generative and so deeply connective. And I certainly learned a ton, and I'm so grateful. If anyone has questions, feel free to be in touch with me or Rachel. We'll be back at the same time next week, and we look forward to seeing y'all then. Thanks so much. Have a great night.